Nice. Okay, it's great to have everyone again. I'm Dustin, and I have my next guest. She teaches um, a number of different students, and she does a great job, and she's going to introduce herself right here.
Hi, my name is Tracey Hultman, and I get to be the elementary teacher at a therapeutic learning program in Olathe, Kansas.
Cool. And how would you describe a therapeutic learning center?
We get to work with students who have challenges in the areas of behavior and emotional, social emotional areas in the general ed population. So they come to our school so that we can teach them how to be safe and how to work with other individuals and really focus on those social emotional skills and build relationships with the students while they're at our program. And then our hope is to eventually reintegrate them back into the general education population once they've learned those skills.
Fantastic. So how many students would you say you have in your building?
We are a K-12 program, and we usually have between about 40 to 50 students.
Okay. And
Our students come and go. So
yeah. Yeah. And how would you average how long a stay is for students at your school?
We've had some students that graduate. We have a graduation at our school, so sometimes they'll start in the elementary and stay with us all the way through graduation. There are times that they might be with us for a couple years. We like to do what is best for each individual student. So if they're able to learn those skills so they can be safe in a short amount of time within that school year, we like to try to get them back into that population as quick as possible. And yet, if they still need to have that help even to graduate, we understand that that child needs that specific needs, and we're able to help them all the way through graduation.
Fantastic. So how did you begin working at a school like this? Did you start out in the regular general education building and decided maybe you wanted a challenge, or has this always been a passion of yours?
I actually took an interesting path to get here. I always knew that I wanted to be a teacher, and since I was in first grade. And so I started teaching students in the general education population for a parochial school system. And so I did that for 9 years. I taught in California for 2 years, and then I taught in Arizona for 7 years. And after teaching elementary general education for a couple years, I knew that I did not have the education and wasn't fully equipped to meet the special needs of all of the learners in my class. So I went on to get my master's and my doctoral degrees so that I could better meet the needs of each individual learner in the class. And then I grew up in Kansas, so decided that I was going to come back here. And it was actually my first because in the school system I used to work for, we were just told what jobs we were going to have and had no interviews. So me moving back to Kansas after 9 years of teaching was my first interview experience. And this was just one of the jobs that I interviewed for. Went on the tour of the school, didn't really know exactly what I was getting myself into at the time, and just knew I wanted to do special education. And this is by far my favorite job that I've ever had as an educator, and the one that I've learned the most from my students and from the staff. And I'm in I believe this is my 8th year at this school now.
So you mentioned that you have completed advanced degrees, including your doctorate. How has that helped prepare you for your current role?
The master's degree I got in special education, so that has helped me so that it was cross-categorical, so I can meet the needs of all of the learners. If I have a student who comes not only for behavior or social emotional needs, maybe they have dyslexia or they have another learning disability, I have that education and knowledge so that I can help them in that area. And then my doctoral degree, I started getting while I was still working for the parochial school system. And my plan was to help start originally a special education program through that parochial school system. And I have helped and been an adjunct professor for that school system and doing that. And that's in leadership and curriculum and instruction. So I can look, what I like to do is ask the students what they would like to learn. And then I take what they would like to do and look at the standards and look at the curriculum that the district has out. And I incorporate the students' interest in that, making sure that we're still meeting everything that we need to for students at that age, and creating more ownership for the students, making it more interesting and engaging for them. And then also using that leadership so that I can be working with staff members and knowing how to do that and how to reach out to the community and involve the community with that, and helping the students so that they're not only learning the skills in our school building, but they're becoming lifelong learners so they can take it outside of the walls of the school.
Fantastic. And so when you talk about student ownership and student leadership, where you're asking them, what would you like to learn? And you're matching it up with the standards. What are some of the things you have noticed about the engagement of your students with that compared to this is what we're going to learn, take it or leave it?
I have noticed that, the students that we have coming in, their engagement level is very small at first. I'm lucky, their attention span, I have the younger kids. And so usually I'm lucky if I can get them for 5 minutes when they first come in. And once I say, hey, what would you like to do? And I even transform my classroom, decorate it according to that theme. I can get them engaged for 45 minutes to an hour. And so when it's something that they're interested in and they want to learn, they want to do it and they want to be a part of it. And so I'm able then to step back as a teacher and let the students take the reign. And it's pretty amazing what they come up with. One of the times I asked them what they wanted to learn and they said donuts. And I was like, how in the world am I supposed to find something with donuts? And one of the things that we did is we had the question of, why do police officers enjoy eating donuts so much? So they got to have the SROs come in and they interviewed them, and we had a donut shop, and people came in and they decided to, the money that they made for the donut shop, they counted it, they donated it. And so with something as simple as donuts that you wouldn't really think you could do a lot with, we were able to really turn that into an awesome unit. And it was great to see the students, and they were shining and taking charge. And as the teacher, you just step on back and let them do their thing, because they're pretty amazing at what they come up with themselves.
Fantastic. And what other skills are they learning about themselves when they're doing that ownership? That, the big popular word that we use is agency, where students are kind of taking control. So what other skills are they learning? Is it self-regulation? Is it communication? Is it, working in a team? What other skills are they learning from these?
Yeah, you hit a lot of them right there. So they're learning that they're able to do things, first of all, because a lot of these students haven't been successful. And so if you're finding a way for them to be successful through something like this, they are seeing that success. They're learning how to work as a team, and that people are going to have different opinions. I'll go back to my donut example. Is I was standing in there, and the teachers and the staff would come in and say, okay, to me, what are we going to do? And I would say, the students are in charge of this. They learn that it's okay to fail. And that's kind of the big thing with me, is teaching the students that your failures are not a bad thing. The failures lead you to better things and bigger things. One of the things I say to them is, potato chips and ice cream cones would not exist if someone didn't fail. And those are pretty awesome things. So I want you to give it your all and see what amazing thing you can come up with. Be resilient, know that it's okay to fail, working together as a team. just learning even the basic math skills that they're learning or reading skills, incorporating the academics into that, and then just going with it. There's so much that they learn, and then even how can they use that to help the community? It's not just about them and doing what they can in the classroom. What can they be doing to help other people and learning these skills so that they're able to expand this and make a difference in other people's lives too? And through that, they're learning how to feel good about something that they're doing. And again, that's success.
Fantastic. So another area that I wanted to ask you, and just from your answer, is working with a team. Now, as me and you are advancing, the workforce is becoming a collaborative work environment. And just in my experience, working with students with behaviors, a lot of times they're the alpha person, where the world kind of revolves around them. How are you able to teach those skills to be able to let their guard down and trust their classmates and be able to share some of the most basic things? What are some of those skills?
And that's a tough one for our students to get, especially the younger ones, is because they do have their opinions. And so what we do a lot is go through that. I mean, you have to put the students, unfortunately, and it's a good thing too, through those tough moments so that they learn how to work through it. You're going to have people in your lives that you don't work well with. And so you have to learn how to get along with those people, how to listen. And that's something we do with our kids too, is when they're having a hard time, you step back, you validate their feelings. What are they going through? Be a true listener. And so each morning we start our day with social emotional skills too, of what does that mean to be a good listener? Are you really listening to what that person is saying? Or are you already preparing what you're going to say back to them? So you practice the skills of being a good listener, of valuing the opinions of others. One of the examples I gave to my students is a lot of them are into video games, because that seems to be a big thing right now with a lot of students, is the electronics. So if you want to create a video game one day, what happens if you want to have a blue character and someone wants to have a green character? We can't just start throwing furniture or hitting and kicking because you're not agreeing on the same character color. What are you going to do to make sure that you're taking a step back and listening to what the other person wants and coming up with a common agreement, and really just having them go through all of those things as a team? We do a lot of different activities that are team building that are probably going to be really frustrating for the students. And I know that ahead of time, because the only way that they can learn how to work through that frustration and through those challenges is to actually go through them personally with the people in their class.
Fantastic. So when you have students that come to your school, you're also working with their parents as well. And I'm sure you get them at the point where they're flustered, they don't know what to do. And then I'm sure you get them at the other end where they want to tell you exactly what to do and how to help their child. How do you build that trust with your parents that, hey, trust us, we're professionals, we're going to do everything we can to help your child, but the best way for this to work is if we're on the same page? How do you go about those conversations?
And that's the same thing with the students too, is building relationships not only with the students, but with the parents is key. And I grew up in a household where I watched my older brother had a lot of challenges with behavior. And I watched my mom would drive up and be like, what did he do today? What are they going to tell me? What's going on? And I told myself I would never be the teacher that was always focusing on the negative things that were going on. The parents already know their child is doing those negative things. That's why they're at the school. So when we say they hit, they kicked, they did this, and you do it over and over again, and that's all they're hearing, you're not going to build a relationship with those parents. So I really try to focus on the positive things and say like, hey, your child did awesome with this today. I was super proud of them. They worked through it. They we did this together. These are the skills that we've been practicing. And then also, if the parents have a concern, or you might see like the mama bear come out, validate them, say, yeah, I can understand why you would be upset about this. This is what's happened in the past, or I can understand how you're feeling. Listen to them, really listen to them, and make them feel heard in the situation. I tell my parents that the two most valuable members of our team are the student themselves and the parents, because without their input, we're not going to be able to know what to do for that student. And so I want to hear what the parents have to say about their kids so that I can be the best teacher for that student.
Fantastic. So again, when you get a student, most teachers and administrators, when they went to school, didn't go to handle severe behaviors. You know, those are very tough skills to learn how to work with those students. So when you get a student who has had trouble, you work together, you're able to help that student return to his regular school. How are you able to convince that school that this student is ready to return? Because chances are when they left, it wasn't on the best terms. How can you say, hey, little Johnny's ready to come back. We've done some work with him and we feel that he's ready to be with his peers?
And that's something that you do on an individual basis too, according to the student. We do some plans that the students go gradually back to the school, or maybe if it's best for the student, they might go back full-time right away. Talking with the school that's getting them, we have to have the data to prove, you know, they've been safe. These are the things that we've been working on. Just showing them we're going to stay with them. That's the one thing that we need to make sure that the staff, receiving staff, and the students know. It's not us just saying, here you go, here's the student. They're still our student too, and we still care about them. So we're going to keep a relationship with them and talking with the staff. What can we do to help the student to be successful so that when they go there, they're continuing to do well? So it's just us continuing not only to work as a team as we were within our building, but making sure that we're working with that receiving team too, so that that student can be successful.
Fantastic. I love it, that the fact that you are still, you know, a part of that student's lives and you're still working together. You're not just handing them off and saying, oh, here you go, he's all yours. So just from talking with you on social media, relationships are an extremely important part of who you are as an educator. Why is that, and how have relationships allowed you to grow as a professional?
When I first started there, I was more academic based and making sure that I was just getting the students through the academics and safe, teaching them how to be safe, just kind of working through the day. And then we had a change in staff, and so they wanted us to talk more about relationships and getting to know the students, and gave us permission to kind of scale back and get to know the students. And so I've noticed that when we've had the opportunity to do that and really build relationships with them, getting to know them, it's helped me to figure out the why behind everything that they're doing. And I just step back and say, you know, why is this happening? What is this child trying to communicate to me through their behavior? And the better I know the student, the better I know why they're doing it, or I can be proactive about something. I know how to talk to them. I know how to calm them down. I know that maybe there's carry-in from something that's happened outside of the building or from a different class, from a different teacher. You get to know what their interests are. So, you know, if they are having a difficult moment, sometimes you can distract them. And so you might use, you know, if one of them likes Sonic the Hedgehog, you might try to incorporate that into what's going on. And it's really helped me to grow, because when you have built really strong relationships with the students and getting to know them, it just helps you to understand yourself as a person too, and also outside of the work environment is, why are people doing things the way that they are? There's a lot to everybody's story. And so it's helped me just to understand all kinds of different situations and to help me understand why I would even approach things in a different way and look at things from a different perspective.
Fantastic. So I know when I have worked with students with behavior concerns, there's three things that really stick out. One, it's for attention. Number two, it's an avoidance. And number three, it's a sensory. So when you have a student who is having a behavior that is an attention, what are they trying to tell you?
It depends on the situation. So maybe it's because they simply need a hug or they need someone to say that they love them that day. I think a lot of times, teachers are afraid to say, I love you. I'm here for you. You don't know what's happened to them earlier that day. What were the struggles that they had in that morning? What was home life like? That's something that I even see with my children, my own children, is, what are they trying to communicate and why are they seeking my attention? Maybe I'm distracted on the phone or something. Maybe a lot of times I'm noticing that if I'm working with another student and they need my help at that moment and I can't help them, they're going to display a behavior to try to get my attention. So I need to teach them that skill of, how do you get the teacher's attention, or how do you get someone's attention when they're already helping somebody else? So it's not necessarily that they want, no child wants to act out and no child wants to do that. You need to teach them that skill that they're missing of asking for help or waiting their turn. And then once you've figured out what it is that they're trying to do, you can teach them that skill.
Fantastic. And what about if you have a student that is doing this as an avoidance? So say, for example, it's time to do some math. They get their math sheet and that thing becomes a big, nice paper ball and they're avoiding it. How are you going to work with that student?
You need to figure out why they're avoiding it. So are they avoiding it because maybe they have a learning disability and that's a difficult assignment for them. Maybe they're looking at that paper and it's like, there are 30 problems on this paper and there's no way I can do 30 problems. So is it something as simple as getting a folder that covers up most of it and you can divide it up? Or are they not understanding the concept? Do they have something that's keeping them from understanding the concept? Is it just math in general? So what is the purpose behind it? Is there more to the story than them just not wanting to do the work?
Fantastic. And then the last one, what about a sensory? Do they have, an autism spectrum disorder? What could it be?
Mm-hmm. And so then it's trying to figure out, I've seen that, for instance, like some of my students will start maybe putting their feet on the table or pushing their feet against the wall. It's really taking a close look at what they're doing and then thinking, okay, maybe they simply just need to push against something. And so you have to find a safe way for them to push against something. If you see them bumping into the wall or bumping into other people, do they need to have like a sensory blanket to wrap around them or a weighted vest to put on them? Some of the other things that we've done are just giving them like a hard piece of candy or crunchy things to chew on. And then an amazing thing that we have in our building is we have a sensory room that has like bubbles and black lights and just different things. Maybe the environment is overstimulating for them. And so you need to get them into a quiet environment. And I know that can be difficult in a lot of our settings because it's like, well, where's a quiet place to take them in our school setting? Sometimes just finding like a corner of your room where you can put pillows and blankets and different, and maybe even noise canceling headphones, and figuring out, is it, are they overstimulated or do they just need to have something to push against, or maybe just even taking a walk to calm them down.
Fantastic. I love it. So just to kind of go back on relationships, now you mentioned that you work with a lot of younger students. So how are you able to communicate with them when at times they may be nonverbal or not have the vocabulary to discuss their needs or their interest or, relate to you? So how do you relate to and communicate with your students?
And that, again, that's getting to know that student as an individual. How's the best way to communicate them? I tend to be a pretty sarcastic person. And so I've learned very quickly that I cannot be my sarcastic, silly self at school because my students do not understand my sarcasm. And even then, like when I try to get goofy, then they might get overstimulated. So you really have to understand, can I be sarcastic with this student? Can I be silly? What's going to happen if I even start dancing around the classroom or something? Getting to know each student as an individual, and then, maybe some of them it's just writing in a journal back and forth to each other, or taking them to just go on a walk so that they feel comfortable. I've had some students who don't feel comfortable talking in front of anybody else. And so it's once you build that relationship, where can you go so that they can talk to you and feel comfortable, and just trying strategies over and over again, and new strategies, and be willing to make changes for the benefit of each individual student according to their needs.
Very nice. So, as you have been teaching, you said you have around 40 or so students in your school. Would you say that there are more students that have a background with being exposed to trauma? And if so, why do you think that's the case?
We are a trauma-informed school too, and so a lot of our students have been through trauma. There's just been a lot of changes in the way that our world is, and different things that kids have been exposed to, and sadly, I mean, that's something that the number has increased. And so it's just understanding too that these kids have been through a lot of trauma, and so their response is likely because of the trauma that they've gone through. And just environmental things, home life, the dynamics of things have changed. And you just look, I mean, it makes me wonder, after a situation like we're going through right now, with the coronavirus, is how are these kids going to be feeling when they come back to school? How are other kids going to be feeling? Because this is traumatic for all of us. So I would assume that that's going to be something that's going to be quite impactful for us as teachers, and for us to understand when we're all coming back in the fall or whenever. I know all of us are kind of on a different thing here in our area. We're done going to school buildings for the rest of the year. So when we go back in the fall, we all have to be mindful of the trauma that every single person in our world is going through right now.
Fantastic. So have you and your team talked about how you're going to reintegrate your students back into the routine that they were in before? I mean, have you started that now digitally by communicating with parents? What have you and your team done to try to keep some sort of routine while meeting their needs?
We as a team have just recently started meeting. As far as talking about next year, I'm actually going to be switching from elementary to high school. So that's going to be a big change for me. And so I'm now meeting with the secondary team, and we've just started talking about that, but that's something as a staff that we are already, I mean, we're in the fourth quarter now of this year. We are already starting to talk about what we're going to be doing and how we can help the students and do what's best for them. And then as far as this year, it's just we have weekly contact meetings that we're talking to the parents and to the students and emailing and just having open communication with them so that they know that even if they're doing their own course of things, following the continuous learning plan, that they could still contact us. We're still there for them. We still want to have that relationship with them. That's probably been the biggest struggle for me, is not having that regular contact with the students and the parents, and being able to keep those relationships going, and stepping back and just trusting that, when we come back in the fall, that we'll be able just to regroup as a team. That's the staff and the students and the parents, and everybody will know, hey, we are all in this together. And that's the one thing I've said to my students that I have this year is, I'm still your teacher. I'm still here for you. We've got this. We're going to get through it together. And just making sure that they know that I'm not going to give up on them, and that the staff is working towards something to help them too.
Fantastic. Now, these are all amazing points, and I love the fact that you are still their teacher. You're all working together and communicating. So you mentioned that you kind of took a different path to your position. Did you ever have a moment where you're like, wow, what did I get myself into? Is this really what I want to do? Mm-hmm. If so, you want to talk about it?
I think when I first started, like I mentioned before, I came from a parochial setting, a private school setting. And so it was the religious, and everybody just, they were very well behaved for the most part, and just kind of did what they needed to do. And I think the first time I went on the tour, I saw the school, I kind of knew what I was getting myself into. But when I had a student calling me interesting names and going into detail about things, I was like, wow, like I did not think that it was going to be like this. And is this really what I want to do? And I was actually pregnant at the time too. And so it was like, do I want to be in this type of environment, in this situation, or under these circumstances? Is the baby safe? Am I safe? And it was just knowing that that's relying on your team, and knowing that everybody around you is going to keep you safe. And our job as teachers and staff members is to keep the kids safe. And so just knowing that even when they're saying that kind of stuff, you don't take it personally, and you just work to keep everybody safe. And that's what helped me to stick with it, is just knowing that they don't mean what they're saying. They're hurting, and they have a reason for what they're saying and what they're doing. And it's up to us to show them that we're not going to give up on them, because they're used to people giving up on them, and being that person who just keeps trying over and over again. And that's what motivated me to keep going, even though the first time was pretty eye-opening for me.
All right. And so when you have a new colleague come in, they may be struggling with relationships. They may be struggling with teaching strategies. What are you going to say to them to convince them, hey, when we build our relationships with our students, we have a major hook in them as far as helping them out? What are you going to say to them to help them with this? And maybe what are some strategies you're going to share to build relationships with these students?
A lot of times it's allowing them just to step in and get to know the students. I try not to tell them a whole lot about each individual student, because I want them to formulate their own opinion and get to know that student, because each person's going to learn about that student in their own way. And so if I've already said, hey, this about the student, that's going to probably help them already have an opinion about the child already. So I tell them just to interact with the student, talk with them, get to know them. And, again, with the staff, it's the same. I tell my students, it's okay to make mistakes. Just know we're here as a team to help you out. And if you, as a staff member, are feeling overwhelmed, make sure that you take care of yourself and remove yourself from the situation. Because the most important thing to remember is, when the students do become dysregulated and they say those things, is that the staff member needs to stay calm. And so if you're not staying calm and understanding the situation, then you need to step away from that situation and allow someone else to come back in so that you can help that student to get through it. So it's just understanding that the staff member needs to understand what they can do and how they need to be taking care of themselves and self-care. And then also just jumping in and getting to know those students. And the best way to do it is to actually get in there and get to know them.
Fantastic. So you mentioned self-care. So what are some things you do for self-care and finding balance? And what have you learned about yourself as a person since working in this setting for going on 8 years now?
For self-care, I like to go on walks. One of the things that I will do is if it's a tougher day at work, I will actually eat my lunch in the classroom with the kids, and then I will take my lunch break to go on a walk if it's a nice day, just to look around in nature, regroup, just have a lot of silence, and then go back in and make sure that I am good and ready to go. I also have played the piano for several years, for 30 plus years. And so that's my big thing is playing the piano and singing. So when I get home, I make sure I do that and use that to help me relax. And it's this whole thing with self-care has helped me learn that, you know, the way that I'm acting controls the temperature in the room. And so if I have had something happen at home ahead of time, that's frustrating, I can't bring that in with me, because if I bring that in with me, that is going to make everybody in the room feel frustrated. So it's important for me to make sure that I'm listening to music and calming myself down on the way to work or going on those walks, making sure that I recognize as the teacher, when do I need to say, hey, it's time for me to step out? Because if I'm regulated and I'm staying at a certain level, then everybody else around me will have the ability to stay at that level too.
Fantastic. I love it. I love the fact that you're going on walks, you know when to step away and really leave work at work and kind of leave home at home. It's a great balance to have. So if you could look into your crystal ball, where do you see yourself as a professional maybe 5 to 10 years from now?
One of my dreams is actually to start a program of my own. And so that's something that I've been working on is there are just bits and pieces of every place that I've been to that I would like to put into to one. And so that's where I would really like to see myself. This whole situation right now with us having to stay at home has helped me to actually start working through a mission and a vision and what type of curriculum and different things that I would like to see. So I'm actually getting on it pretty strong right now. So I'm hoping to see that start going here pretty soon.
Fantastic. So what is your vision for this goal of yours?
Well, I want to have an environment where students can focus on their relationships and that they can learn the lifelong skills to implement beyond the walls of the school building. And so that's going to be focusing on the safety and the security of the students in the building.
Fantastic. So is it going to be like a private setting, or is it going to work with the public schools? Are you looking for students with behavior needs? What kind of students, or what students are you looking for?
I'm still kind of in the work, so that's where I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I want to do or what avenue I want to take with things. The one thing that I have found is really helpful is that if you have students who have learning disabilities or special needs in different areas, that it's very helpful to have a peer model. And so I actually would really like to have a setting that has the general education population and students who have special needs, so that like they're coming in, they're saying what they would like to learn, the teachers are incorporating that, and then they're learning from each other. Because one of the things that I've noticed at a lot of our settings is We have the students come in, like in our setting, and they don't have the peer models. And so they're learning the behaviors from each other, and they're not the social skills that we necessarily want them to be learning. And they don't want to learn that from the adults always, because we're adults and we're not fun to learn from always. And so when you have the students come in and teach them how to do that, they're probably more likely to want to learn those skills and have that good example.
Fantastic. Listen, this is something you can absolutely do. It would be a wonderful place for students, for families. And I support it 100%. I love everything that you've said. So the last question I'm going to give you is, what does "we are one team" mean to you?
I feel we are one team is we are all working together. We need to lean on each other and know that everybody has something to bring. We can get to know each other and use the skills that, Dustin, that you're good at doing. Get to know that and working together so that we can benefit not only the students, but we can benefit each other and all learn and grow as individuals too.
Fantastic. I love it. I love it. Listen, I can't thank you enough for coming on. You're a real asset and a real difference maker, and I can't thank you enough for the impact you have on others.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. All right.